Welcome back to the deep dive, where we try to cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need.
Great to be here.
You know that unsettling feeling, don't you? That sort of pervasive sense that the systems we rely on, whether it's, I don't know, politics, economics, even global cooperation, they just feel fundamentally broken sometimes.
Yeah, like they're creaking under the strain.
Exactly. It often feels like the promises made by leaders are, well, hollow, and the truth is constantly obscured by layers of rhetoric, maybe self-interest. It's a disillusionment that resonates, I think, across borders and cultures, kind of a collective sigh for something more authentic.
It absolutely does. There's a palpable and I think growing awareness that the old frameworks, the established ways of doing things are really struggling. They're struggling to address the incredibly complex modern challenges we face.
Yeah.
And this leads to a profound sense of frustration on people who are desperate for real tangible solutions, not just more of the same old stuff.
And that's exactly what we're plunging into today. This deep dive is an exploration of some truly compelling sources, all united under this powerful, almost urgent banner: the age of deception must end.
Strong title.
It is. Our mission for you today is to walk away with not just a comprehensive understanding of the issues at play, but also, hopefully, a thorough grasp of the surprisingly concrete and, frankly, audacious proposals for a future built on truth, merit, and knowledge.
Right. These aren't just abstract ideas floating around.
Not at all. What we'll be discussing are detailed blueprints for systemic transformation, almost a radical reimagining of how societies can function.
We'll begin by unpacking these urgent calls for change, looking at both the deep-seated systemic problems and these audacious solutions you mentioned. Our primary focus will be on a groundbreaking vision emerging from Nepal. It's a nation grappling with its own unique set of political and environmental challenges.
And it's fascinating.
It really is. But as we explore Nepal's journey, we'll also draw some truly fascinating parallels to a broader, equally critical call for accountability and decisive action within the Muslim world.
Ah, interesting. So connecting the local and the global.
Exactly. It's a journey that reveals, I think, a universal human yearning for integrity and, well, effective governance.
And what's fueling this deep dive? Our core sources are a series of thought-provoking excerpts. They're from a collection titled Democracy for Nepal.
Okay.
And these pieces offer a multifaceted critique of current global and national challenges. But then, crucially, they pivot to a radical vision for solutions. This vision is centered around a philosophy they call Kalkiism,
Kalkiism, right.
and a new model of governance termed Gyan Tantra. It promises to be an intense but incredibly informative and, I think, deeply inspiring journey. So let's unpack this. Okay, so we're starting our exploration in Nepal, a nation whose recent history, according to these sources, has been marred by decades of what they powerfully term political betrayal.
Yeah, it paints a rather stark picture.
It really does, suggesting Nepal has been caught in this intricate web of political deception, false promises, and, frankly, the insidious misuse of powerful ideologies.
It's fascinating how precisely the sources pinpoint the traditional political forces in Nepal. Specifically, they name the Nepali Congress and the Communist Party as central to this narrative of deception.
Big players, basically.
The big players, yeah. These parties, historically, claim to represent the common people. They championed lofty ideals like socialism and communism. And on paper, these philosophies, in their purest forms, advocate for profound societal good, justice, equality, empowerment for all. The good stuff.
Right, and for context, these weren't just vague concepts, were they? Socialism, at its theoretical core, aims for a system where every citizen enjoys truly equal access to essential services. We're talking universal education, comprehensive health care, genuine job opportunities.
The foundations of a fair society.
Exactly. It's about the state actively serving the public good, distributing resources equitably, and communism, well, in its initial idealistic formulation, was about the radical empowerment of the working class, giving voice and power to those who literally build the nation with their hands, striving for a classless society. Noble aspirations, really, for any nation seeking progress.
Precisely. But what the sources reveal is a critical, almost heartbreaking distinction between these proclaimed ideals and the actual practices on the ground in Nepal.
Ah, the reality check.
Exactly. They argue quite vehemently that these noble philosophies were hijacked by power-hungry elites and exploited for private gain. That's a direct quote, and it's pretty strong.
Hijacked. Wow.
Yeah. The promise of justice, equality, and empowerment, these foundational pillars of their rhetoric, became, according to the sources, Nothing more than a thinly veiled facade for self-serving actions.
So just lip service, basically.
Pretty much. And this, of course, isn't unique to Nepal. It highlights a universal challenge, doesn't it? How easily grand narratives and revolutionary aspirations can be co-opted and corrupted for personal agendas and narrow interests, ultimately betraying the very people they claim to uplift.
It's that classic bait and switch, isn't it? Leaders talk the talk, weaving these grand visions for the future, but then their actions tell a completely different, far more cynical story.
Yeah, the walk doesn't match the talk.
So if that's what socialism and communism should have been, in theory, what did these traditional parties actually do in Nepal, according to the sources? They don't hold back, do they? They break down 4 key areas of systemic betrayal. It paints a pretty damning picture of how public trust was systematically eroded.
Yeah, they really lay it out. The first area, and it's a deeply corrosive one, is what the sources call nepotism and internal corruption.
Ah, the old classic.
Right. They explicitly state that these parties, ostensibly champions of the people, transformed their political organizations into family-run empires.
Family-run empires. Good grief.
That's the term they use. How? By systematically filling party positions, from the highest levels down to local branches, with relatives, in-laws, and uncritical loyalists.
So competence optional.
Pretty much. This meant that merit, genuine skill, and critical knowledge were not just ignored, but actively cast aside. Imagine the implications. Decisions aren't made by the most competent, but by the most connected.
Leads to disaster eventually.
Inevitably. Widespread inefficiency and a profound lack of accountability. It's a systemic undermining of competence itself.
And that creates a self-perpetuating cycle, doesn't it? If loyalty to a personal network consistently trumps actual ability, you inevitably end up with leadership that's ill-equipped, maybe even uninterested in truly serving the public.
Exactly. Which leads directly to the second key area they identify. They promoted crony capitalism in the name of development.
Okay, explain that. Development sounds good, but crony capitalism, not so much.
Right. Instead of genuinely developing the nation for the benefit of all citizens, these parties, according to the sources, actively collaborated with powerful business elites.
Ah, scratching each other's backs.
Precisely. This created a rigged system where only those with specific political connections thrived. Wealth and opportunity were channeled to a select few, effectively protecting the rich and powerful at the expense of empowering the poor, who were left struggling in the margins.
So economic policy basically weaponized for personal gain.
That's how the sources frame it. It's a textbook example of how economic policy can be manipulated to create and perpetuate staggering inequality. It wasn't about fostering broad-based economic growth for the nation. It was about wealth extraction and consolidation for a connected few, deepening the divide between the haves and have-nots.
Yeah, you see that pattern elsewhere too.
Absolutely. The third point highlighted by the sources is particularly galling. Debt in the name of the people, corruption in practice.
Oh, this sounds bad.
It is. They detail how billions were borrowed from foreign institutions and international lenders, supposedly earmarked for vital national development projects, infrastructure, social programs, economic upliftment, stuff the country needed.
Okay, borrowing for development isn't necessarily bad in itself.
No, but the truly infuriating reality, as our sources reveal, is that this monumental sum of money was siphoned off through inflated contracts, layers of middlemen, and outright scams.
You siphoned off, so stolen, basically.
Essentially, yes. The projects either never materialized, were shoddily executed, or cost exponentially more than they should have, with the excess vanishing into private pockets.
It's unbelievable.
And the crushing consequence, the actual debt burden, those billions borrowed, was left squarely on the backs of the Nepali people. Imagine that future generations inheriting a massive debt for phantom projects, or ones that only enriched a select few, never truly benefiting the citizens.
That's not just corruption. It's a profound betrayal of intergenerational trust. It's mortgaging the future for personal gain today.
Absolutely. And this leads directly into the fourth and final point of this systemic failure. Deals with foreign donors and capitalist middlemen.
Okay, what kind of deals?
The sources assert that these parties went further, compromising Nepal's very sovereignty. They did this by cutting opaque deals with donor agencies and foreign-backed capitalist interests, often behind closed doors, without transparent public scrutiny.
So, secret deals affecting the whole country.
Exactly. This resulted in a significant loss of national direction, as policies were swayed by external agendas, leading to an unfortunate and entrenched economic dependency. It wasn't just a betrayal of economic trust, it was, in the words of the sources, a surrender of national autonomy, leaving Nepal less able to forge its own path.
Wow. It's a compounding, almost cancerous problem, isn't it? You borrow money that gets stolen, you compromise your national interests through backroom deals, and then you become beholden to the very foreign entities that facilitated the debt, deepening the cycle.
Precisely, a vicious cycle.
And our sources are very clear, almost issuing a stark warning about the future. They state unequivocally that these parties will betray us again if given the chance.
Yeah, that's a powerful indictment.
It really is. Suggesting that the current paradigm is so deeply flawed that simply changing faces, swapping one leader for another from the same pool, won't solve the core issue.
Indeed, it strongly suggests that a fundamental structural shift is required, not just a cyclical change in leadership within the same broken system.
A whole new system.
That's what they seem to be arguing. The existing political and economic paradigm, according to these sources, is inherently prone to self-serving behavior, to the detriment of the nation and its people. This cyclical nature of betrayal is precisely what they believe must end.
So if that's the grim, almost cyclical reality of what has been this age of political deception and profound betrayal, what does a truly radically different future look like? Our sources point to a truly audacious new vision for Nepal, one that promises a revolutionary approach to governance itself.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, because they're not just criticizing, they're proposing concrete alternatives.
Okay, so we've meticulously outlined the deep-seated problems, the political deception, the systemic failures that have plagued Nepal for decades. It's a heavy picture, for sure.
Definitely paints a bleak scene.
But our sources refuse to let it be the final word. They introduce a new chapter, a new vision for Nepal, one they claim is powered not by empty slogans, but by merit, knowledge, and transparency. This, they argue, marks a decisive crossroads for the nation.
This burgeoning vision is championed by what's identified as the Satyug Samaj Party.
Satyug Samaj Party.
Okay. And the sources frame this not as just another political alternative, but as a complete and wholesale rejection of the old, corrupt systems.
So a real break from the past.
That's the idea. It's presented as a bold, almost revolutionary move towards something fundamentally different in the very DNA of governance. It's about tearing down the old structures that enable corruption and building entirely new ones based on competence and clear purpose.
And at the absolute heart of this radical new approach is a concept called Gyan Tantra.
Gyan Tantra.
Which translates quite directly to knowledge governance.
That's right, knowledge governance.
This is proposed as a groundbreaking third option, stepping entirely beyond the traditional dichotomy of, say, monarchy versus conventional republicanism.
Yeah, something completely different.
It's explicitly described as a meritocratic model of leadership where competence and expertise are not just valued, but systemically mandated. And here's where it gets incredibly specific and, frankly, quite audacious in its restructuring.
Okay, lay it on us. How does it work?
Well, under Gyan Tantra, the traditional structure of leadership roles is completely reimagined, repopulated with specific types of expertise. The sources state that all ministers are economists.
All ministers, economists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that not just career politicians or party loyalists, but actual experts who deeply understand the intricate mechanisms of national wealth creation and equitable distribution.
So the idea is that economic policy, the lifeblood of any nation, would be guided by professional expertise, data, and long-term vision, rather than short-term political expediency or, personal gain.
Exactly. It's presented as a direct response to the crony capitalism we just talked about.
Makes sense. What about other roles?
It doesn't stop with the cabinet. They propose that all MPs, members of parliament, would be MBAs and visionaries.
MBAs and visionaries. It's an interesting combo.
Isn't it? These would be professionals bringing a profound understanding of planning, strategic execution, and global awareness to the legislative process. It's about ensuring that laws aren't just debated and passed based on partisan interests.
Which happens all the time.
Right, but are strategically designed, almost like long-term national business plans, for genuine national progress and sustainable development. It's about bringing serious business and strategic acumen to the very heart of government.
Okay, so economists running the ministries, MBAs, and visionaries in parliament. What about local government?
Right down to the most immediate, tangible level. All mayors are engineers.
Engineers? Really? Why engineers?
The profound insight here, according to the sources, is that mayors, the leaders closest to the people, should be individuals who possess the practical skills to actually design, build, and implement essential infrastructure.
Ah, so they can actually get stuff done, not just cut ribbons.
Precisely. They wouldn't just be cutting ribbons or making grand speeches. They'd be actively managing projects, ensuring efficient urban planning, water management, road networks. This directly addresses the practical day-to-day needs of urban and regional development with tangible technical competence rather than just political promises.
That's radical. I mean, putting specific qualifications on political roles like that.
It is. So what does this truly all mean for the daily functioning of a nation? How might such a system genuinely ensure that decisions are driven by data, scholarship, and public deliberation, not partisan interest or demagoguery?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, the sources suggest an intriguing, almost futuristic idea, equipping every citizen with the digital tools and AI companions to stay informed and actively participate.
Whoa. AI companions for citizens.
Yeah. This isn't just about electing qualified people, it's about creating an entirely new, digitally empowered ecosystem of governance where knowledge is shared and utilized at an unprecedented scale.
That's truly profound. It envisions governance not as a competitive game of power where factions just vie for control, but rather as a system of collective intelligence.
Collective intelligence, I like that.
Yeah, by systematically integrating expert knowledge at every level of decision-making, from national policy to local infrastructure, and crucially, by empowering citizens with transparent information and these advanced tools. The aim is to foster a decision-making process that is inherently more rational, more transparent, and laser-focused on the common good.
It's like they're saying many of our modern societal failures stem from fragmented knowledge and siloed decision-making.
Exactly. And by doing this, they're proposing a fundamental redesign of how societies think and act collectively.
Okay, and this brings us to the broader philosophical framework underpinning Gyan Tantra, Kalkiism.
Kalkiism, right? You mentioned that.
The name itself, Kalki, evokes a sense of profound transformation, doesn't it? Perhaps drawing on ancient concepts of renewal, the dawn of a new age. A powerful idea for a nation seeking a fresh start.
Definitely symbolic.
And the sources present Kalkiism not as just a buzzword, but as a policy revolution that promises to fundamentally reimagine Nepal's entire economic and social structure, offering a bold alternative to both capitalism and socialism.
A third way, essentially.
That seems to be the idea. It's not a superficial fix. It's presented as a deep, systemic re-envisioning.
And what's truly compelling, or at least adds weight to it, is that this isn't merely a theoretical construct from some ivory tower.
Yeah.
The sources emphasize that Kalkiism is supported by a broad coalition, over 100 economists and scholars from more than 15 public universities across Nepal.
Wow, that's significant buy-in from academia.
It is. It indicates a strong academic and expert consensus behind it, suggesting a deeply researched, nationally rooted, and perhaps practical proposal, not just an ideological flight of fancy.
Okay, so let's really delve into Kalkiism's core principles. How are they specifically designed to address Nepal's entrenched systemic issues?
Right, let's break it down. First, and this is foundational, it calls for universal access to healthcare, education, and justice.
The big three.
Exactly. And they're not ambiguous or vague about this. The sources explicitly state 100% free healthcare, education, and legal services for all Nepalese.
100% free. That's incredibly ambitious. How would they even fund that? Though maybe that's a question for later.
It's definitely ambitious. It elevates these essential services from commodities or privileges to fundamental rights, accessible to every citizen regardless of their economic status. A huge promise.
Okay, what's next?
Second, Kalkiism proposes a truly innovative, corruption-proof smart currency system.
Ah, the smart currency. We need to dive deep into that one.
We will. But the principle here is clear. It's a direct technological intervention designed to eliminate counterfeit money and ensure transparent, traceable transactions. It's an elegant, almost ingenious solution directly targeting one of Nepal's most significant and pervasive economic challenges, the deep-seated corruption that has plagued its development.
Right, hitting corruption where it hurts the money flow. Okay, principle 3.
This one is fascinating. Job localization.
Job localization. What does that mean?
The vision here is truly transformative. 90% of employment would be within walking distance of one's home.
90% walking distance. That sounds utopian.
That's it. Imagine your daily commute as a stroll down the block. No more rush hour, no packed buses, no long hours stuck in traffic. It would drastically reduce urban crowding, minimize the need for fuel-dependent transport, and reconnect people with their local communities.
It sounds almost like a dream for city dwellers anywhere, doesn't it? Think of the quality of life improvement.
Absolutely. This principle aims to radically decentralize economic activity, fostering robust, self-sufficient local economies. And this has not only significant societal benefits, but also substantial environmental advantages.
Ah, linking to the environment. Good segue.
Exactly. Which brings us to the fourth core principle, green development. This foundational policy emphasizes preserving Nepal's vital forests and actively promoting clean, renewable energy sources. It's a direct acknowledgement of Nepal's unique ecological vulnerabilities and its potential for sustainable, nature-aligned growth.
So environment isn't an afterthought, it's core.
Baked in from the start. And finally, circling back to the very core of Gyan Tantra, the fifth principle is merit-based leadership at all levels of governance.
Back to competence.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that the most capable, the most knowledgeable, and the most dedicated individuals are consistently steering the ship, from national policymaking down to local administration.
So the overarching vision articulated by the sources is what? A Nepal where truth replaces propaganda.
That's part of it, where efficiency replaces delay, and crucially, where service replaces self-interest. It's not just a set of policies, it's presented as a fundamental paradigm shift in national character and purpose.
If we connect this to the bigger picture then, Kalkiism is clearly aiming to create a society where foundational human needs are universally met.
Right. Healthcare, education, justice.
Economic interactions are transparent and fair.
Thanks to things like smart currency.
Environmental health is actively prioritized and protected.
Through green development and forest policy.
And leadership is based on genuine competence and public service.
Precisely. This holistic, interconnected approach is designed to build a far more resilient, equitable, and ultimately a more truthful nation, explicitly moving away from the age of deception.
Okay. One of the most intriguing and concrete pillars of this Kalkist vision, and one that directly addresses both economic issues and the deep-seated problem of corruption, is this smart currency system. It's a truly innovative concept. So let's unravel what that truly means for daily life in Nepal and how it proposes to achieve such ambitious goals. Right? We've talked about the grand vision of Gyan Tantra and the comprehensive philosophy of Kalkiism. Now we're diving into one of its most practical and, frankly, revolutionary components, the smart currency.
Yeah, this one really caught my eye.
Our sources introduce this as a next-generation monetary system that aims to achieve something truly audacious.
Yeah.
Make Nepal the world's first 100% cashless nation and a 90% corruption-free country within just 3 to 4 years.
Wow. 100% cashless and 90% corruption-free. In 3-4 years, that's incredibly ambitious. Almost unbelievable, really, for any nation, let alone one grappling with significant development challenges.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how they think they can pull that off.
Well, what's particularly fascinating here, and crucial for understanding its potential impact, is that this isn't just another digital payment system, like, the QR codes or apps we see widely adopted in many developed countries.
Right. It's not just Apple Pay for Nepal.
No. The smart currency is explicitly designed from the ground up to be profoundly inclusive, meaning it aims to seamlessly integrate rural, uneducated, and technology-deprived people into a modern financial system.
That is a critical distinction, because often those are the people left behind by digital transitions.
Precisely. The sources underscore that it's a policy-based, technical revolution, not just a tech gadget. And they proudly highlight that it's supported by over 100 Nepali economists, which gives it significant local backing and intellectual rigor.
Okay, so it's clearly not just an app on your smartphone that requires high-speed internet and a bank account. How exactly does this smart currency work, then? To be so inclusive and simultaneously corruption-proof, it sounds almost too good to be true given the complexities.
Yeah, the devil's usually in the details with these things. But the sources provide a detailed breakdown of its ingenious mechanics.
Let's hear it.
The core of the system is surprisingly simple in concept, yet potentially incredibly effective in its design. First, and this is foundational, there are unique barcodes on every note.
On the physical money, like on the paper bills.
Exactly. Imagine every single physical currency note in circulation, from the smallest denomination to the largest, having its own distinct, unreplicable barcode. This instantly creates a digital identity for every piece of cash.
Okay, so each rupee note is unique. digitally speaking.
Right, which is the very foundation of traceability and accountability.
That immediately sounds like a counterfeiting nightmare for anyone trying to fake it, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But it gets even more personalized, creating an even tighter loop of accountability.
How
Well,
so?
that's the next ingenious step, designed specifically for the Nepali context. Family-specific barcode sets.
Family specific, what does that mean?
Each registered family in Nepal would receive a personalized set of physical currency denominations, say a certain number of 1 notes, 10 notes, 100 notes, up to 90 or 1,000, and these notes would be tied specifically, digitally, to that family.
Whoa, so the money itself is linked to a household.
That's the concept. It creates an immediate, potentially unbreakable link between the physical currency and a specific household, making every transaction involving those notes traceable back to its origin. It's a radical personalization of money.
So your money is literally your money, uniquely identifiable, making anonymous cash transactions almost impossible.
That seems to be the goal.
But here's a huge practical challenge in many developing nations, Nepal included. Widespread internet connectivity issues, inconsistent power, varying levels of digital literacy. How does the smart currency system overcome those very real obstacles, especially for people in remote villages?
This raises an absolutely critical question, and the answer is key to its radical inclusivity. Offline verification.
Offline, how does that work with barcodes?
The sources explain that these unique barcodes can be verified without internet access, using low-cost handheld devices or scanners. Think simple, dedicated devices.
Like a price scanner at a supermarket, but for money.
Sort of, yeah. And they specify that these devices can be solar or battery-powered, making them robust and adaptable for remote areas with unreliable electricity.
Okay, that's clever. Solar-powered verification.
Right. This means that uneducated villagers can easily buy and sell goods and services using this system without needing a smartphone, a bank account, or even a consistent internet connection.
They just need the special cash and the vendor needs the scanner.
Essentially, yes. It brings the benefits of digital currency, the traceability, the security to people who are traditionally excluded from such advancements.
This truly is a potential game changer for financial inclusion. It directly addresses the pervasive challenges of connectivity and digital literacy head-on by, as the sources say, bringing tech to their level, rather than forcing people to adapt to complex digital infrastructure they might not have access to or understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It genuinely redefines what financial modernization can look like, putting the needs of the most marginalized at its center. It's an approach that values grassroots participation and tackles real-world infrastructure limitations directly.
Okay, so the mechanics are clever. Now let's explore why smart currency matters so much, beyond just its innovative design. The sources highlight that corruption, a pervasive problem globally and particularly acute in Nepal, thrives in anonymity and cash-based economies.
Right. Cash is king for corruption because it leaves no trace.
So smart currency offers a direct, elegant, and technologically robust solution to this age-old problem. How specifically?
Well, the first major benefit, which directly targets corruption, is transparency, because every single transaction facilitated by the smart currency is automatically tied to a specific identity.
Through the family-specific barcodes.
Right. And in an ideal system, perhaps linked to a declared purpose, every transaction becomes traceable. This makes it incredibly difficult for illicit payments, bribes, kickbacks to simply disappear into the shadows, or for large sums of money to be moved without a clear digital footprint.
So it creates a deterrent just by making anonymity impossible, like shining a light into dark corners.
That's the idea. It sounds like a massive blow to bribery, under-the-table dealings, and the siphoning off of funds we discussed earlier in the context of those development loans.
Yeah, definitely. And what about security? Counterfeit money is a huge problem in many developing nations, isn't it? Eroding trust in the currency and the economy.
Absolutely. And here, with unique, scannable barcodes on every single note, each one digitally registered, counterfeiting becomes nearly impossible, according to the sources.
Nearly impossible. That's a bold claim.
It is bold. But the logic is that any attempt to duplicate a barcode or to introduce a note without a legitimate digital history tied to a family would be immediately flagged by the verification system, even the offline ones. This brings an unprecedented level of security and trust to the currency that traditional cash, with its vulnerability to sophisticated printing, simply can't offer.
Okay, so transparency fights corruption, unique barcodes fight counterfeiting. What else?
Then there's accessibility, which we touched on. Because it doesn't require high-end smartphones, stable internet, or even a traditional bank account, anyone can participate. This truly ensures financial modernization without digital exclusion, allowing even the most remote farmer or street vendor to engage in secure, traceable transactions.
So it's not just about stopping bad actors, but profoundly empowering everyone, especially those who have traditionally been left out of formal financial systems. That makes them vulnerable, right? Unable to access credit, save securely, fully participate in the economy.
Precisely. It aims to level the playing field in a fundamental way. And finally, a hugely significant benefit for governance: data generation.
Ah, the data aspect. What kind of data?
When transactions are linked to unique identifiers, like the family unit,
Yeah.
and perhaps purposes, even if aggregated and anonymized for privacy, and that's a crucial point, the privacy aspect.
Yeah, very important.
The system generates an enormous wealth of data about economic activity.
Mm.
This anonymized data can then be used for incredibly precise and effective policymaking. Think about taxation making it fairer and more efficient, or development planning targeting resources where they're actually needed based on real economic flows.
So it enables what the sources call evidence-based governance, moving decisions away from guesswork or political favors and towards actual verifiable information about economic activity and needs across the nation.
Exactly. Data-driven policy in a very direct way.
This raises an important question, though. How do they plan to implement such a profoundly revolutionary system? It sounds like a massive logistical and educational undertaking, even with its offline capabilities. You can't just flick a switch on something like this, surely.
No, definitely not. And the implementation strategy proposed by the sources seems quite cautious, pragmatic, and iterative, which is often key to success for such large-scale changes.
Okay, so what's the plan?
The roadmap proposes starting with pilot projects in 5 to 7 remote villages.
Small scale first. Smart.
Yeah, a gradual rollout allows for real-world testing and refinement. The sources explain that they will initially issue barcoded cash alongside existing currency. So, no immediate disruptive demonetization that could cause chaos or panic.
Right, avoiding the pitfalls seen elsewhere with sudden currency changes.
Exactly. Instead, they'll train locals extensively on how to use the system, both consumers and vendors, with the scanners. They'll meticulously track the data from these pilots, adoption rates, transaction volumes, user feedback, and then carefully evaluate its impact on local corruption, economic activity, and overall acceptance before considering a wider rollout.
That's a smart approach. Test it, refine it, learn from it, and then scale it. Okay, so beyond the technical specs and the ambitious goals, what makes this smart currency truly revolutionary in the broader sense, especially for a nation like Nepal?
There are several key aspects highlighted. First, it's profoundly local first, designed by Nepalese for Nepal's specific context and challenges, not some generic solution imported blindly from elsewhere.
That's crucial for adoption and relevance.
Absolutely. Second, it brilliantly bridges old and new by making physical currency smarter, rather than forcing a complete leap into purely digital realms that might be inaccessible for many. It meets people where they are.
Yeah, it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, it's upgrading the existing system.
Right. Crucially, it's anti-corruption by design, meaning the fight against corruption isn't an afterthought or a separate policy. It's baked into the very fabric of the monetary system itself.
Intrinsic to the technology.
Exactly. It also empowers the last mile, ensuring financial inclusion for those typically left behind by technological advancements. And perhaps most importantly, as the sources emphasize, it's sovereign.
Sovereign, meaning?
Meaning it's developed and controlled by Nepal itself, not by foreign tech companies or external powers. This autonomy is absolute key to its long-term viability and ensures that its benefits accrue directly to the Nepali nation and its people, rather than profits flowing overseas or decisions being dictated by external corporate interests.
That sovereignty point is huge, especially given the earlier discussion about dependency and foreign deals.
It really is. It's about Nepal taking control of its own financial future.
This innovative approach to currency and governance is designed not only to fix economic issues and root out corruption, but also, quite critically, to directly address another looming and potentially catastrophic crisis: the environment.
Yes, the climate angle.
The sources take a very serious, almost desperate tone when discussing the future of Nepal's iconic Himalayas. This next part of our deep dive is, frankly, truly chilling. It serves as a stark warning. Our sources present an alarming forecast for Nepal, one that speaks to an existential threat. The Nepali Himalayas could melt within 30 years.
30 years, That's terrifyingly close.
Isn't it? This isn't just some distant, abstract prediction for a far-off future. It's presented as an immediate, urgent threat. Leading research bodies like ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, predict that a staggering 75% of Himalayan ice will be gone by 2090.
75%, that's almost all of it. The implications are enormous.
And what's particularly impactful here is how the sources bring this abstract, long-term scientific projection right into the present. Make it incredibly visceral. They provide the shocking detail. Machhapuchhre lost all of its snow by 2024.
Lost all its snow. Already. Wow.
Yeah. This isn't just an estimate or a future possibility. It's presented as a current, tragic reality for at least one iconic peak. This immediate, visible impact paints a very grim, almost apocalyptic picture of the future. They warn of rivers running dry, farms failing, and people dying, not from hunger, but from thirst.
Dying from thirst. In a country known for its rivers, that's an image that should compel immediate drastic action.
It really should. That's more than just an environmental crisis. It's an existential one. To lose a primary, irreplaceable water source, the very lifeblood of a nation, it would be absolutely devastating.
Completely changes the country's future.
So what does this all mean practically for Nepal? Our sources frame this not just as a loss of breathtaking scenery, but as an existential crisis for the entire nation. They warn of the inevitable consequences. Dry rivers across the plains.
Which impacts agriculture downstream.
Exactly. The collapse of agricultural systems that feed millions. A severe, widespread drinking water crisis, and the potential for Nepal to transform from its current status as a water-rich nation to a water-stressed nation in a shockingly short period.
That transformation would redefine every aspect of life there. Economic stability, food security, health, migration patterns, everything.
So this raises an incredibly important question, one that demands a hard look in the mirror. What's actually causing this rapid and alarming melting? Is it just global warming generally, or are there specific local factors?
Well, the sources are very clear in their assessment. They argue this impending disaster is not just a distant global phenomenon or solely due to external factors. They assert that it originates significantly from our cities, our policies, and our lifestyles within Nepal itself.
So taking some internal responsibility.
Yes, they don't shy away from detailing the internal contributions, breaking it down into 5 key melting culprits.
Okay, let's unpack these contributing factors because understanding the causes is crucial for finding solutions, right? What's the first one?
First, they point to population explosion and urbanization. They highlight how overcrowded, poorly planned cities like Kathmandu, Pokhara, and Janakpur have become major pollution hotspots and significant sources of carbon emissions locally.
Right, that rapid, often uncontrolled growth of urban centers without adequate infrastructure or environmental foresight. It concentrates human activity and its environmental footprint. Lots of traffic, energy use, waste.
Precisely. Rapid, unplanned urbanization without sufficient green infrastructure concentrates both human population and energy consumption, leading to disproportionate pollution. Second, the sources identify petrol and diesel dependency.
Transportation again.
Yes. They highlight the widespread lack of efficient public transport systems across Nepal, which has directly led to a massive proliferation of private vehicles, particularly two-wheelers, motorcycles, scooters.
You see them literally everywhere in Nepal. Millions of them.
Right. And this widespread ownership of petrol and diesel vehicles burning fossil fuels on a daily basis directly contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and accelerates global warming. It's a huge collective impact from individual choices forced by lack of alternatives.
That connection between transportation choices and climate impact makes perfect sense. Okay, what's culprit number 3?
Third, they highlight deforestation and forest fires. This is about the relentless destruction of Nepal's natural carbon sinks its vital forests across both the hills and the plains, the Terai region.
How is that happening? Logging.
Yeah, through illegal logging, unchecked agricultural expansion pushing into forest areas, and those devastating seasonal wildfires that strip landscapes bare. These fires release huge amounts of stored carbon and, crucially, reduce the planet's ability to absorb more CO2 in the future.
And forests are so critical, aren't they? For climate regulation, biodiversity, water retention. They act as natural sponges and air purifiers.
Absolutely. So their destruction exacerbates the problem significantly, creating a vicious cycle. Less forest cover can also lead to faster snowmelt and runoff.
Okay, so urbanization, transport, deforestation. What's fourth?
Fourth, and this is a particularly complex challenge, the sources point to Industrial pollution from neighbors.
Neighbors,
Yeah.
meaning India and China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They describe Nepal as a climate sandwich caught geographically between two industrial giants. The massive greenhouse gas emissions from China's factories to the north and India's heavily coal-based energy plants and agricultural burning to the south directly affect the fragile Himalayan region.
So pollution doesn't respect borders.
Not at all. This highlights that local impacts in Nepal are often tragically tied to broader regional and global activities. It puts Nepal in a difficult position of suffering severe consequences it didn't solely cause.
So Nepal is effectively suffering disproportionately from its neighbors' emissions, despite potentially having a much smaller industrial output itself. That seems incredibly unfair.
It's a harsh reality of atmospheric science and geography. And finally, the fifth culprit they identify: policy paralysis and government inaction.
Back to the governance issue.
Right. Despite making grand declarations on the international stage, like promising net zero by 2045, the sources claim there has been zero implementation on the ground.
All talk, no action.
That's the accusation.
Yeah.
They say it's just empty promises, political posturing without meaningful follow-through. This isn't just a political failing. The sources frame it as an environmental betrayal.
Wow. This is a critical and deeply cynical point. It underscores the idea that even with widespread awareness of climate change and officially stated goals, a profound lack of political will, coupled with ineffective governance, perhaps the same kind we discussed earlier, riddled with corruption and nepotism, can render all environmental efforts useless.
Exactly. It highlights a betrayal of environmental promises, much like the political betrayals we discussed earlier, leaving the nation vulnerable despite its stated intentions, kicking the can down the road until it's too late.
So, given the immense scale of this threat, melting glaciers, water scarcity, and the compounding factors, both internal and external, the big, desperate question is, can anything truly be done? Is it actually too late?
It certainly sounds dire.
But the sources, perhaps surprisingly, offer a glimmer of hope. They emphasize that it's not too late, and that the Kalkiism vision, the one we've been discussing, offers implementable, tangible alternatives.
Okay, so Kalkiism isn't just about economics and governance. It has an environmental dimension, too.
Absolutely. They frame it as nothing short of an environmental counter-revolution, a direct and urgent response to this looming catastrophe.
So how does Kalkiism address these specific melting culprits?
Well, this brings us directly back to Kalkiism's integrated solutions. First, and this links back beautifully to our earlier discussion, is job localization.
Right, the 90% jobs within walking distance idea.
Exactly. By drastically reducing the need for fuel-burning commutes, the system aims to significantly cut carbon emissions from transportation, which we just identified as one of the major culprits. It's not just about green energy sources, but about rethinking daily life itself to be inherently more sustainable and low carbon.
That's a truly holistic and ingenious approach. It's not just about implementing green technologies after the fact, but about fundamentally redesigning the societal structure to embed environmental sustainability into everyday living patterns. Less travel needed means less energy consumed.
Precisely. Second, smart currency.
How does the currency system help the environment?
Well, while its primary function is fighting corruption and promoting transparency, the sources suggest it's also designed to play a crucial role in environmental policy. Its traceable nature means it can potentially be used to incentivize green behavior, maybe through targeted rewards or discounts for sustainable choices, or perhaps disincentives for polluting activities.
Using the financial system to nudge behavior.
Exactly. And it can also help enforce environmental spending priorities. Remember the issue of funds being siphoned off. Smart currency could help ensure that funds allocated for green initiatives, like reforestation or clean energy projects, are actually used for their intended purpose.
So it creates an economic mechanism for environmental good, tying financial accountability directly to ecological responsibility. Clever.
And finally, a forest-centric climate policy.
Okay, what does that involve? More than just planting trees.
Much more. It involves a radical reevaluation of Nepal's natural assets, specifically its forests. The policy proposes treating forests as sacred national assets, that's the term used. This means implementing total deforestation bans, ensuring no further loss of these vital ecosystems.
A complete halt to deforestation. That's strong.
Very strong. It also mandates aggressive, government-led reforestation programs and empowers community-based management initiatives to protect and restore these crucial carbon sinks and biodiversity hotspots. It's about restoring and actively protecting Nepal's natural capital, recognizing its irreplaceable value not just for Nepal, but for the planet.
So protect what's left and actively restore what's been lost. Makes sense.
The sources end this section with a very urgent, almost poetic call to action. It's a stock warning that feels like it transcends Nepal. The next 30 years will decide the next 300. Choose wisely.
Wow, that puts it in perspective, doesn't it? The next 30 years, our immediate future, deciding the fate of centuries to come. It emphasizes that the decisions made now within our lifetimes will have profound, long-lasting consequences.
It's a powerful plea for foresight and courageous leadership, isn't it? Not just in Nepal, but everywhere.
Absolutely.
Now, this theme of deception, inaction, and the need for a radical shift isn't just confined to Nepal's internal politics or its environmental crisis. Our sources reveal a parallel, equally profound challenge regarding solidarity and accountability, echoing across the globe, specifically within the broader Muslim world.
This is the connection you mentioned earlier.
Yes. It's a similar age of deception, they argue, but playing out on a global geopolitical scale where ideals are processed but action is found wanting. Let's explore that. Okay, let's broaden our scope now, as our sources powerfully pivot from the specific challenges and proposed solutions in Nepal to a much wider, equally pressing issue, what they identify as a profound crisis of action and accountability in the Muslim world.
Right, shifting focus significantly here.
And this section hits hard, not just with observations, but with a series of powerful rhetorical questions, almost an emotional plea encapsulated in the question, where were you when we needed you most?
That's a heavy question. Who is it directed at?
It resonates deeply, and I think it's meant to. It's directed particularly at the plight of oppressed Muslim communities globally. The sources mention the Palestinians enduring blockade and conflict, the Rohingyas facing ethnic cleansing in Myanmar, and the Uyghurs suffering systemic repression in China.
Okay, so situations of extreme suffering and injustice.
Exactly. For them, these aren't just philosophical questions about divine justice or abstract solidarity among the faithful. The sources state these are urgent, visceral, and tragic realities as they desperately seek shelter, justice, and simply a safe haven. It's a stark reminder that suffering is concrete, and so too must be the response.
So it's more than an emotional plea. It's presented as a direct challenge to the conscience of the wider Muslim world.
That's exactly how it reads. They're not just asking for thoughts and prayers, but for concrete, decisive action. And the sources are unflinching in their critique. They highlight not just external oppression and geopolitical pressures, which are obviously huge factors, but crucially, they also point inward, highlighting a failure of the wider Muslim world itself to truly respond effectively.
That's a strong internal critique. What kind of failure are they talking about?
They directly accuse the Muslim world, or perhaps more accurately, its state actors and powerful entities of a failure of unity, resource sharing, and providing safe haven. They don't mince words, explicitly stating faith without action is hypocrisy.
Oof. That's a powerful indictment, challenging the very essence of spiritual commitment.
It is, and to illustrate this stark disconnect, they pose a series of poignant questions, almost designed to elicit discomfort. Ask a Palestinian child in Gaza what their belief in Allah has brought them, in terms of tangible relief or protection. Or ask a Rohingya refugee if the Islamic world truly came to their aid with significant sustained support. Or ask a Uyghur if the powerful Gulf monarchies ever genuinely raised a strong, unified voice for them on the international stage.
These are devastating questions.
They are. And the answer, the sources suggest, is often a quiet, painful silence, or even more damning, a shameful silence. The implication is clear. Words and prayers alone, without concrete action to alleviate suffering or demand justice, fall devastatingly short in the face of such crises.
That's a real gut punch. It's a call for profound self-reflection within the Muslim community globally, challenging whether their collective actions and priorities truly align with their stated faith and values, particularly the emphasis on compassion and justice in Islam.
Exactly. And this leads to another very provocative and I think incredibly insightful point from the sources, a critique encapsulated in the phrase, from Mecca to McDonald's, materialism over morality.
From Mecca to McDonald's. That's a powerful metaphor, isn't it? Intentionally jarring.
It is. This section critically examines the shifting priorities of some of the wealthiest Muslim nations, specifically naming Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. The sources state they have shifted their priorities dramatically in the past 2 decades, moving away from what might traditionally be expected from nations professing deep religious values and custodianship of holy sites.
How have their priorities shifted, according to the sources?
They draw a stark contrast between the immense wealth amassed by these nations, trillions in oil and gas revenue, and their lavish spending on things like gleaming skyscrapers in Dubai, pouring billions into European football clubs, hosting mega events, and indulging in luxury cars and extravagant lifestyles.
Okay, so displaying immense wealth, we see that.
Right. But the sources then ask, quite pointedly, amidst all this spending, where is the refugee city built for Palestinians, offering safe haven and dignity? Where is the sustained humanitarian corridor for the Rohingya, providing escape from persecution and long-term support? Where is the International Muslim Tribunal, funded and championed by these nations, to investigate and demand justice for the Uyghurs on the global stage?
These are direct, challenging questions that highlight a perceived moral vacuum amidst incredible affluence, a disconnect between capacity and action on humanitarian fronts.
Precisely. And the sources provide a critical, almost brutal quote to summarize this perceived moral and spiritual shift. They began worshiping Coca-Cola, not Allah.
Wow, that's incredibly pointed.
It's presented as a powerful metaphor, obviously not literally, but for prioritizing economic empires over ethical responsibility. It suggests a fundamental reorientation, where these nations are seen as aligning more readily with global capital than with Islamic solidarity, effectively trading their moral compass, or at least their potential moral leadership, for material gain and geopolitical expediency.
It's a very pointed critique of a perceived disconnect between professed spiritual values and rampant material pursuits, suggesting a loss of focus on the core tenets of the faith like charity and standing for the oppressed.
It's a powerful image indeed, suggesting a profound reorientation of values within a significant part of the Muslim world. But the critique isn't limited to the wealthiest states. What about Iran? Iran often positions itself as a fierce champion against imperialism and a vocal protector of the oppressed, particularly Palestinians.
Right, Iran leads the self-proclaimed axis of resistance. How do the sources view their role?
Well, our sources have some uncomfortable questions for Iran as well. While acknowledging Iran's stance against imperialism and its role as a protector of certain groups, the sources critique its strategic choices. They question Iran's preference for military confrontation and ideological expansionism over regional humanitarian leadership.
So focusing on conflict rather than care.
That's the critique. They ask why billions are seemingly spent on proxy wars, missile programs, and regional influence campaigns, while neighboring populations, including other Muslims in places like Syria or Yemen, continue to suffer from poverty, starvation, and displacement.
A question of resource allocation and priorities.
Exactly. They further question why Iran, despite its strong pro-Palestinian rhetoric, hasn't offered mass asylum to Palestinian refugees or created dedicated safe zones within its own borders given its size and resources. The sources argue that Iran, by its actions, chose a path of bombs and ballistic missiles, instead of positioning itself as a sanctuary, a true haven for the persecuted from across the region.
So it's not just about what certain wealthy nations aren't doing, but also the choices made by those who claim to be leading the charge for justice and resistance. The critique seems to be about the methods chosen, prioritizing military power over direct humanitarian intervention or refuge.
That seems to be the core of it. And the sources make it clear that for them, the deepest tragedy here isn't just political or economic mismanagement or strategic choices. It's indicative of a profound spiritual decline within the broader Muslim world.
A spiritual decline. That goes deeper than policy. What do they mean by that?
Well, they raise an important question. What's truly at stake beyond geopolitics and material wealth? The sources highlight that the Quran itself emphasizes foundational Islamic values like mercy, compassion, and unity. Yet they argue the modern Muslim world is tragically characterized by fragmented loyalties, sectarianism, and silent complicity in the face of immense suffering, both within and outside its borders.
So a failure to live up to the core ideals of the faith itself.
That's the argument. They ask, with almost an anguished tone, where is the Ummah, the united global Muslim community, meant to stand together as one body? Where is a shared responsibility for justice? Where is the action that follows prayer, transforming faith into tangible change?
These questions underscore a deep internal crisis of purpose and identity, suggesting the concept of a unified, compassionate Ummah is more rhetoric than reality in practice today.
That really drives home the point. It's a powerful call for a return to core values, to rebuild a sense of collective purpose and moral fortitude. So given this scathing critique and the profound challenges outlined, what did the sources propose as the necessary path forward? How can dignity and genuine purpose be restored to the Islamic world according to them? What fundamental shifts are needed to end this alleged era of hypocrisy?
They don't just leave it at critiques. They do outline 5 crucial, interconnected changes they see as necessary.
Okay, what are they?
First, recenter the faith. This means returning Islam to its ethical roots, emphasizing mercy, justice, compassion, moving beyond merely using it as a cultural identity marker or a political tool, and embracing its foundational moral imperatives in action.
So getting back to the core spiritual and ethical teachings. Makes sense. What's second?
Second, build refuge, not just rhetoric. The emphasis here is on concrete action, providing actual safe homes, secure places, and long-term support for the oppressed, rather than merely offering eloquent speeches or symbolic gestures of solidarity. It's about creating tangible sanctuaries.
That's a very concrete and immediate demand for action, directly addressing the plight of refugees and the displaced. And with the immense wealth some of these nations possess, the next point seems particularly salient and almost a moral imperative.
Exactly. Third, use wealth for welfare. The sources issue a powerful call for leveraging the trillions in oil revenue, a staggering amount of capital, to actively end hunger, build essential schools and hospitals, and invest in sustainable development across the entire Muslim world, prioritizing the neediest communities.
So transforming passive, often ostentatious, wealth into active, impactful social and humanitarian investment, addressing fundamental needs directly.
Precisely. Fourth, promote merit and morality in leadership. This involves a critical shift away from systems often dominated by traditional dynasties, military strongmen, or entrenched elites. Instead, fostering pathways for qualified, compassionate, and ethically driven leaders to rise leaders who prioritize the welfare of their people over personal power or enrichment. Similar in spirit, perhaps, to the meritocracy idea in Nepal's Gyan Tantra.
An interesting parallel, merit and morality in leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, and fifth point.
Finally, something that applies universally, perhaps. Hold each other accountable.
Internal accountability.
Yes. The sources state unequivocally that Muslims must hold their own governments and leaders to account for their actions, or inactions, rather than solely blaming external factors or outsiders for their problems. This highlights a crucial internal shift, a demand for self-critique and internal pressure for change from within Muslim societies.
That's vital for any community seeking progress, isn't it? Looking inward as well as outward.
Absolutely. The overarching call, weaving together all these points, is for reconciling wealth with its wounds, its power with its purpose, and its faith with its responsibility. To ultimately end what the sources call the era of hypocrisy and usher in a new age of integrity and genuine solidarity based on action, not just words. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. What an extraordinary and intense journey we've taken today. We started our deep dive in Nepal, examining the profound political betrayal and the looming environmental catastrophe that, according to our sources, has plagued the nation.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. The systemic issues were laid out very starkly.
They really were. But then we explored the revolutionary Kalkiism solutions proposed by these sources. Gyan Tantra, with its visionary model of knowledge-based governance.
The engineers as mayors, economists as ministers. Quite radical.
The innovative smart currency system designed to create a cashless, corruption-free future for all, including the most marginalized.
That offline verification aspect was particularly interesting.
And the urgent green policies aimed at nothing less than saving the Himalayas from imminent collapse, linking jobs, currency, and forest policy together.
A very integrated vision, trying to tackle multiple crises at once.
And from there, we broadened our scope, drawing clear and compelling connections between Nepal's challenges and this crucial, equally urgent discussion on accountability and action within the broader Muslim world.
Yes, we saw how the sources articulated a profound crisis of solidarity there too, highlighting a perceived shift from spiritual purpose to unchecked material pursuits in some of the wealthiest nations.
The Mecca to McDonald's metaphor.
Right, alongside a critical look at how even resistance movements can, at times, be seen to prioritize conflict over direct humanitarian action or providing refuge.
The overarching theme that powerfully ties all these seemingly disparate sources together is incredibly resonant, isn't it? It's this urgent, undeniable need to move beyond an age of deception.
Absolutely. Whether it's political promises broken for private gain in Nepal,
or environmental inaction despite dire scientific warnings.
Or that stark lack of global solidarity in the face of immense suffering discussed in the context of the Muslim world.
The core message is that truth, merit, and knowledge must become the driving, transformative forces for a better, more just future. This isn't just about policy tweaks. It's presented as a fundamental shift in values and priorities.
It's a profound call to action that really transcends specific geographies and particular issues, doesn't it? It challenges us, as global citizens, to look critically at the foundations of our own societal systems, and perhaps even more importantly, at our own values and collective responsibilities. It really argues for moving from mere rhetoric, from just talking about problems, to demonstrable, tangible action.
So as you, our listeners, reflect on all of this, on Nepal's audacious vision for a knowledge-based future and the Muslim world's call for internal accountability and action, we want to leave you with a provocative thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
What systems in your world, big or small, maybe your workplace, your community, your country, seem ripe for a knowledge-based revolution, or perhaps just a fundamental shift from rhetoric to genuine, impactful action?
Where do you see that gap between words and deeds?
Exactly. How can we as individuals and as communities contribute to ending this age of deception wherever we find it? And how can we truly help build a future powered by truth and knowledge for ourselves and, critically, for those who need it most?
Think about where you see similar patterns of disconnect between promise and reality, and what tangible steps, even small ones, could lead towards a more accountable, more merit-driven, and ultimately more truthful society in your own sphere of influence.
Definitely food for thought. That's all we have time for on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.